by the 9 and 4. Welcome once more to the library, where today we're going to take a look at one of the most famous locations within the realms. Somewhere that fortunes are won and lost, and the greatest warriors and combatants of the realms can slay and be slain, and then toast the winner's success that evening. This location, of course, being the Colosseum, or Grand Arena of Polaron. As I was performing my research on the city of Polaron itself, and its vast and intricate history, which is presenting many issues of its own, the information I have found on the arena, as well as an account of a battle held there, that I shall relay at the end of this, seem more than worthy of an entry on its own, short though it may be. As stated, the arena is one of the most universally known locations within the realms, and this is for many reasons. First and foremost, it is the largest edifice of its kind, being roughly a square mile in footprint, and it is larger still inside, due to the second point about the arena that garners so much of its fame. However, with grounds large enough to host full naval, air, and ground combined arms contests and combats, there is nowhere else in the realms that one can go to that compares to its size, grandeur, or prestige. That second point brought up is the fact that there is also no other place in the realms known to have the amount of magical, divine, psionic, and other meta energies to include elder workings of the Anilars and dragons incorporated in the construction of one place. Everything from the temperature, to the vast arrays of seats that allow nearly 1 million spectators to watch their match as if there was only yards from the action, to the way the arena grounds can be separated and subdivided to host multiple matches at once, all while able to contain the combat forces of even divine beings. These are all evidence of the power of the workings laid over and over again as the ages have gone by. And by far, the most spoken and most known of the magics and qualities of the arena is the fact that death is not the end. While this really may not seem that odd to a place with magic and powers as common as the realms, the fact that it restores all supply and repairs any sundered gear, mends any injury, results in the fact that all battles held there are held to the greatest possible form. And, while the specter of death being permanent may be absent, being torn from limb to limb still hurts, and is rather embarrassing as well. Now, there are almost always fights ongoing, with multiple classes and divisions, and seasons of themed and regulated battles. In fact, there are hundreds of fighters that will spend decades never leaving the arena, living, training, and fighting all within the massive city within a city that the arena is, all for the chance to earn glory and wealth, while proving their greatness. And at least once a year, there will be a week of grand tournaments, where the best of the best will be gathered and allowed to battle for the title of champion of their division or class. Each class will crown their own champions for that year, and then those champions will battle for the title of Grand Champion of the Year. These are some of the most intensely followed battles all year. This would be a good time to speak to the fact that, via a series of enchanted mirrors that are a staple of bars across the realms, the battles and their betting odds are able to be seen in real time across the realms. The betting on the matches not only in Polaron, but at any number of vastly smaller, yet affiliated local battle rings. This is a large part of many barkeeps' margins, with only a reasonable fee being charged for the use of the mirror each year. However, occurring at least once a generation, or perhaps as often as once a decade, there will be a bout or event that will outshine most others within that time. Most often this is because the combatants are of the highest caliber. Names such as Smoke of the Wrecking Crew, Varia of Ego Corps, Rassilon of Zero Brenth, members of the family Skychild, even Her Majesty herself have been known to participate. And such bouts seem and tend to bring the realms to an utter standstill, so enthralling is the spectacle that these events tend to be. Such as the following account of a bout should, I hope, display a little bit of what makes this such a special and unique place within the realms. I hope this little dive into the arena has given you a better understanding of its nature. Now, before we get into the battle, and until you next visit the library, my perceptive patrons, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves, and each other. The following account takes place in the year 1367 of the current age, the Age of Stars, and features a battle between the Commodore of the Expedition's fleet, Killian Skychild, son of Verisar, and the God of Aether, Rolak Tagra. Unfortunately, there is no information as to the run-up to this event, whether this is a settling of some affair between the two or a whim of fancy, as the gods are known for from time to time. The author of this account, likewise, is unknown. They started 100 yards apart, and for many long seconds they seemed to exchange words that were meant only for each other, before the smaller of the two gods, Rolak Tagra, summoned his sword, and the battle was joined. At first they moved with great flourish and flash, throwing blasts of divine energy and other powers that could level cities and continents, while countering and dodging similar attacks from the other, with the arena negating all wayward or deflected shots with thundering cracks of power, each to the roar of the crowds. They teleported and moved at speeds mortals could not keep up with, if it were not for the magics of the arena allowing us to see and process the actions of these titans of histories and divine might. I vaguely remember one of the people in the box I was guest of exclaiming that they were still showboating around and hadn't even begun to take the bout seriously, even after 5 minutes. This confused my young self. I did not understand how such power could be showboating. However, moments later, as Killian batted away Rolak's blade with the back of his gauntlet laughing, the gnome conjured another dagger into his other hand and used it to slice open the younger god's smiling face, passing the blade from cheek to cheek and splitting open the mouth of the master of the Expedition's fleet. Killian's sudden and violent counterkick sent the little gnome flying at great speed, and laughing as he stood up, Rolak pointed with his little dagger from the end of the trench his body had made. And as Killian noted the wound was failing to knit itself, the dagger was Aether, physical Aether. Thus the wounds must be healed normal slow. No magic will heal them. The resultant sounds of Killian trying to slow his rage-filled breath while seemingly drawing and sheathing his throwing spikes could be heard as the only and loudest noise within the arena. Moments later, listening to Killian's attempts to calm his rage, Rolak summoned his blade and chose then to go back on the attack, only to see Killian barely raise a hand, and as Rolak swung, dozens of those throwing spikes appeared and slammed into the gnome's blade from all angles, shattering it and sending him flying back from the force of the explosion. Rolak manifested and caught himself by planting a pair of tonfas into the ground, dragging to a stop, and then stood. Again I heard another cry from the box, something about them being the tonfas of the dreamer. I of course had no idea what that meant, but the fight that occurred right then made clear that indeed they had been showboating. It is hard to perceive fourth-dimensional combat, even with the vast magics of the arena guiding and helping to translate what we were perceiving. It is harder still to attempt to relay it to another. Blocks to blows that were thrown minutes ago, and parries for blows that wouldn't be thrown for another minute, all while trying to strike out and hit not just the right place, but in the right time. The combat was complex and very hard to follow. However, it seemed like Rolak with his tonfas was trying to pursue a strategy of tight pursuit, staying close to Killian and making him fight for every moment, where Killian seemed to want to keep the engagement range flexible and mutable, suiting his style of mixed melee and throwing spikes, augmented by the powers of being a Time Lord of the Skychild line. This made him the superior mobility. As the battle went on, they flitted in and out of vision, the sounds of strikes and parries ringing from places they were not yet or weren't anymore. The tempo of this battle began to grow and grow as they began to land more and more blows on each other, each of them bleeding and still increasing this maddening pace of battle. However, as I was informed, the battle reached its 36th second of intense time-jumping free-for-all. To be honest, it felt more like 36 minutes if we could put it all out in a single line. But Rolak displayed his edge in age and combat experience, being millennia older than the Skychild, by bringing the contest to a conclusion. With a flourish of acrobatic prowess, he first severed and freed Killian's mantle of Temporsis from his shoulders for but a moment. Using that flash of time when Killian's connection to this powerful artifact was broken, Rolak struck, and struck hard. With both tonfa he impaled the younger god, striking from each side and under his ribs, putting the full length of the tonfas in the chest cavity of the younger god. However, Killian, holding a trio of void throwing spikes in each hand, slammed them into the side of Rolak's neck and shoulder in response, charging and pushing his energy through with his full might, as Rolak seemed to do the very same through the tonfas. The resultant explosion knocked all of us back and sent quite a few to the floor in shock, shaking the arena, while no one outside would be any of the wiser of the devastation that had just occurred. When the dust settled, there was no sign of the gods, only a floating announcement that the fight would be called as a draw by mutual annihilation. Both gods had chosen to go back to their places of power to restore themselves instead of having the powers of the arena do so. Most likely a sign that both of them were smarting after such an explosive yet inconclusive end to their bout. Now, many cries of joy went up as winners of bets heard the announcement, equally met by moans of disappointment raised by those who thought there would be a different end to this bout. For my part, I had just seen the greatest contest of might in my life, and now would be praying every night to the V's to protect us and ensure that no combats like this ever had to occur outside the arena. It's no wonder the ancient empire chose to join us, rather than face the full focus of such power.